that brings me on to PRACTIVATE. So, get your notes ready on there. Notes. Right here. So, the idea of PRACTIVATE, what is it? Well, in a nutshell, PRACTIVATE, and you can click the next slide, PRACTIVATE is practical innovation to help coaches to enable swimmers to swim faster. And I said to the girls yesterday that one of the things that we're aiming for, Dara from SNZ and I, is that PRACTIVATE will become part of the Google Dictionary. Okay? Yes. Because the bottom line is we want to deliver more and better swimmers at the world level. We want to swim faster. But we want to go a little bit further than that. And we talk about, well, what's going to happen to swimming? Where does swimming fit into the scheme of things? I would love nothing more than swimming to be the most important sport in New Zealand, because I want it to be beyond the sport. I want it to be something that people want their kids to get into, because it encourages, teaches, and they learn all the things that are really, really important. You know, so we know that swimming gives them great discipline and self-management, but how much energy and how much fun do they get out of it, and what goes back into it? And it doesn't matter whether you are 5 years old or 25 years old, we want to get the same effect. And by doing that, it raises our profile, and then coming back to the nitty-gritty again about how do we get better, it raises our coach's profile. So for me, the whole point around PRACTIVATE is to make our swimmers faster, and to make it so that whenever a nation has a swim coaching conference, that they want to invite a New Zealand swim coach, because New Zealand swim coaches are the best at delivering skill and performance. And that's got to be our ultimate. If we want to be the best nation, skillfully, in the most skillful nation in the world, then that's got to be part of that plan. So that's really what PRACTIVATE is. And also, I've already answered some of the stuff on the next slide, which is why. So, in order to get what we want, we've got to solve quite a few problems. So basically, our coaches, along with the rest of us, but our coaches have got to become brilliant problem solvers. They've got to look at the problem that we've got, and they've got to be able to solve it. And we've got to solve it with the means that we've got in front of us. In order to solve it, we've got to understand a few things first. Lars Huber gave me the inspiration for the whole thing by saying, why can't New Zealand be the world's most skillful swimming nation? It doesn't mean we win the most medals, but we can still be the most skillful. But in order to do that, I'll flip to the next one, mate, we've got to understand a few things. I'll come back to the little bit that says 12 coaches up there in a moment. The phrase practical innovation to help coaches to enable swimmers to go faster doesn't really need any more explanation. Zero ambiguity. It's really clear. But in order to understand it, and in order for us to become incredible problem solvers, we've got to understand a few things first. And the first thing that the coaches, and I say the coaches because, again, it all comes back down to their interpretation of how it's going to work. First of all, we've got to embrace what we don't know. We've got to be able to say, well, up to now, we haven't been good enough. And it doesn't matter whether we're a para coach or an able body coach or whatever, we've got to say, well, what is it that we've been doing that hasn't worked? Because if we keep doing it, we know what the answer to that is. So we've got to look to change. We've got to look to do things differently. And we've got to look to see where it does work well and how we can bring it in. We can make loads and loads of excuses. We can say, well, we're a small nation, we're competing against bigger sports, we're isolated, we're a long way from the rest of the world, we have crap pool space, we have crap pool times, and on and on and on. And we've used those excuses, right? We use them all the time, but at the end of the day, we can't control any of those. We can only look at what we can control, and we can control what we want to learn and how we want to do it. And once we do that, and we start to understand where the gaps are, so the gaps in performance, the gaps in skill, the gaps in coaching, where are we not? Where can we coach better? How can we coach better? Once we start to understand that, we start to move forward. And then when we come up with these solutions, we work on them and we test them. And then the key to it will be, what's the impact? And we'll measure that. And the whole of the PRACTIVATE process is to go through this. And we'll look at what those solutions are, and we've got to measure their impact. We know we can measure their impact because we've got lots of ways to do that. You know, we can do it for analysis and results and data, but also the one thing that I'm going to be pushing all the way through is a term, again, none of my stuff's ever original. Took it from Ian Turner many years ago. He talked about added value. And that was real simple. So we'd do a really hard training set, and at the end he'd make the swimmers stand up and do a max 50. And then, you know, and they do well, and that was a bit of added value. Well, for me, the added value is, coming back to what we said about building from the base, is that if swimmers see that, if everybody who's involved in the sport sees the purpose and sees what we're trying to achieve, then they'll know that when their young kid comes into swimming, if they have really, really good potential physically and athletically, then our system allows them to go all the way through to fulfill their potential. But if their potential physically they're going to reach a ceiling, the rest of the potential that swimming can unlock in terms of confidence, knowledge, understanding and love of the sport, that's got to be able to come through. And lastly, we've got to accept one thing, that we're really small, so no one knows it all, no one can do it all on their own. So when we work our way through and we embrace what we don't know, we test what we do know, we start to look at our impact, we've got to share it. And first of all I wrote, we share this across our community, but then I thought, actually no, I like the word movement, because I want it to be a full movement, I want it to be the whole thing. And when I was talking to Dara about this, I said, the bottom line is, two heads are better than one. So this is about everybody joining in and sharing. Okay, so next slide please, mate. PRACTIVATE, how, who and when. PRACTIVATE is ours, it's locally led. Swimming New Zealand are the driving force behind it, but we're the driving force behind it. And if you think back to the last set of slides, at the top in the corner I said 12 coaches. We have got some great coaches in this country. We've got some really, really top coaches. We don't have a massive amount of them at the moment because the talent and the potential has been untapped. But we do have a few coaches who can help lead the way. And I want to call them our coaching leaders. And they'll be heavily involved in this. When we set PRACTIVATE up, they'll be the ones that will be either acting in a mentor role, they'll be the ones leading some basic ideas, and they'll be the ones that will be bringing the rest of the group together. But there will be what I'm going to call out one of our key partners. Our key partners are our coaches themselves, especially that leading group. Our other key partners, SNZ, they're obviously funding it, but they're also wanting to drive new ways forward. They're looking for ways to innovate. They need to do things differently. So one of the things that they're prepared to do is to say, right, swimming, you've got a great idea. We'll support it, and we want to encourage more development, more innovation. So, click the next one please, mate. Our partnership with SNZ will allow us to put forward between 1 and 6. We're talking about maybe 4 to 6, but I've said between 1 and 6, depending on the quality. 1 and 6 scholarships for coaches. And those scholarships will run across the length of our first PRACTIVATE period. And basically the coaches will apply for the scholarships by putting forward their ideas for innovative and new ways to develop skill. Because the bottom line is skill. We can keep training our kids harder, we can train more, but at the end of the day, on the world stage now, there isn't one swimmer winning a medal who is not absolutely top draw in terms of skills. There's a guy, an Italian guy called Polcinari, who's the 1500 metre Olympic champion, who, and with all due respect to him, he's a great swimmer. He's probably the last of the old generation who is not particularly skillful, but he's just tougher than anybody else, and he's the last one. And he's going to get beat this time. He probably won't win because somebody who's got better skills will be able to swim alongside him, beat him off the walls, nice, effective, efficient stroke, and they'll beat him at the finish. And he will be the last of swimmers who are not world class in skills at the top. Our swimmers have to be that good. So we need coaches who are going to do this. So there'll be about 4 to 6 scholarships, PRACTIVATE scholarships. SNZ will throw their full weight into it, their expertise. They're experts in skill acquisition, they're experts in analysis, strength and conditioning, and anything else that we feel that we need, that those coaches need to access. With that comes their resources. There's lots of learning opportunities, and also access to other sports if need be, again through the connections with SNZ. And out of it, those coaches will get great learning, growth, but all of us will get the opportunity to learn and grow a bit, because there'll obviously be the feedback coming from that. So along with the general PRACTIVATE idea that we're all going to move forward, there's the opportunity to drive our coaches further and further forward on that. Because at the end of the day, if we're going to have skillful swimmers, then they've got to be absolute, as I said, they've got to be master practitioners. They've got to be so highly skilled that they just deliver it without thinking about it. Our coaches therefore need to be master practitioners.
So Gary, HPSNZ have invested 30k into this project, haven't they?
That's right, and it's a 30k with the option at the end for them to push more money into it as it moves forward. So, in a second there's going to be the same. In fact, we'll flip the next slide up. So this is what it looks like at the moment in terms of the timeline, but it's absolutely continuous, because there is no end to it, because we're going to continually improve. I'll come on to that in a second. I just wanted to emphasise that our swimmers need to be highly skilled. Their skill integrity needs to be maintained at race speeds. In other words, they've got to have the fitness and the stuff that goes along with it for their skills to stand up. And training fitness is a skill as well. And they've got to be able to perform when it matters. And Alistair made me say, not only when it matters, Gary, make sure you put the right time in as well. So when it matters and at the right time. In other words, on the big stage when they've got to do it. And their performance behaviours, another aspect of skill that we're going to continually working on. We've got to make sure that those performance behaviours are unconscious, that there's not something that's going to create, they're going to need to use energy up when they're getting ready to perform. It's got to be ingrained so that they just do it. And these are all aspects of skill that we need to develop. So this is what the time scale looks like. October this year, we've said 11th and 12th, but I'll explain a little bit later why it's actually only going to be the 11th. That will be PRACTIVATE 2020. From after the actual summit itself, which I'll go through in a second, we will then recruit. So we'll put out applications, and coaches, and any coach that's on PRACTIVATE can apply. However, I'm not saying we'll be biased, but we will be looking for the coaches who are performance-based to be applying and leading it the first time through. And the reason for that is because, as I'll come on to, that's where you guys will come in on your side of it. And then, basically through the 2 years, you'll see H1, H2, H3 and H4 there. There'll be like little weekend groups or 2-day gatherings of this group of coaches where they'll come back together, report back on what they're doing, and look at the next stage forward. And in between that, obviously, identification of what they need to be looking at, the solutions, and then measuring the impact. So it really works, that's the way it works. It's ready for us to come back and them to get off board at PRACTIVATE 2022, which would be after New Zealand short course. And that would be the end of the first phase, and hopefully it's ongoing. Don't think that needs any more explanation there. So if we just want to click on to the next slide. So we've got 16 weeks to go before PRACTIVATE 2020. We originally were going to do it in April after NAGS. It was going to be 2 days, and we spent a hell of a lot of time planning it. And I think it was good. It was good. I'll say so myself, that we looked at all of the aspects of skill development that we need to address, and we had a very, very structured program. A bit of a revelation, and we want to do it differently. We've got 16 weeks to go, and I think that it needs to be massively hard-hitting It's got to be really impactful, and we've got to get it so that everybody wants more when they leave and they want to be part of it. And I think that we need to show the world, the New Zealand world, and the powers that be, just how focused swimming is on becoming a new sport, innovative, creative, forward-thinking, and all-encompassing, not just high performance, but the whole thing.
Just a quick question. When you talk about Practivate's the whole programme, isn't it?
It is.
But when you say 16 weeks to go, that's just the
first Practivate
launch.
Yeah. Practivate 2020.
Yeah.
Let's call it that. So, ideally, we'll click the next one on there.
Is it like a summit, you mean?
Yes.
Like a summit.
Yeah.
It's like a summit. We're going to have these people our summit. That will be me and Steve to start it off. Steve, I'm relying on you to say something really.
Well done.
Put that in my diary. Cancel that family holiday to Fiji.
I'll actually come back to what I would like, the way I would think in right now, the way I'd like to address it. But I also think our three most successful repeat medalists should be there. That's Sophie, Lewis and Cameron. They've all done what we want according to our high performance strategy, which is they've all won medals on multiple occasions. Repeat performers. So there are our repeat performers. I'd like them to address the group and talk about how important it is. Now, what is this group? Well, this group is obviously the 12 coaches plus the 30 to 40 named coaches that I had originally invited from a performance perspective. But now this group is now going to expand to include any coach in the country and any swim teacher, and some selected people from other aquatic sports. We probably will keep it to aquatic sports for the first time through. But the next person I'd really ideally like to get is obviously the Minister of Sport. That's a massive ask, I know, but we're not talking about Practivate 2020, we're talking about $260 million, which is sitting out there, which I think that we can grab a large chunk of if the high performance stream is matched by the community stream, and I think that's the key. So if we can't get him, we're going to get the closest thing to it, and I think that would be really good. And we want to show that everything I've just talked about. So. I'll very quickly, I'm aware I didn't want to go on too long, very quick, but I want to tell a little story actually, because I think that encapsulates what we're looking at. And I want to tell a story about a little kid who, and it's a true story, that as a 2-year-old had never been swimming and had a mother who was very, very scared of water, didn't want, was not comfortable around the water at all, and so the little kid didn't get to experience swimming at all. Stepfather came along and wanted to encourage them to do swimming, took the little kid along to swimming, and she loved it. And stepfather was very, very happy in the water, quite competent themselves, and the kids started to really enjoy the water. Got to the stage where they were 5 years old, and stepfather said, or dad said to mum, look, we need to get swimming lessons. We need to get her swimming lessons. So they took her along to the local pool during school holidays, and they do the crash course. And she was the only kid in there with we call them armbands in the UK. Everyone else is standing there, no armbands, but mum, because she was so scared, and insisted on the armbands. And the swim teacher arrived. So the first of all, the experience of being, just having fun with the family, and this kid fell in love with the water. Second experience, a swim teacher, a really wonderful swim teacher whose attitude and approach was just right for those kids of that age, but also was a fantastic educator and was really good at doing the job, skilled at doing the job of teaching how to swim. So within one day, the armbands were off, and within the end of the week, the little kid could swim. A few more months in swim school, improving and getting better, led to the swim school saying, I think that, if you're interested, that she would enjoy going to the swim club. Went to the local swim club, which had a really nice setup for building kids through from a young age through. met with a couple of the swim coaches. They took the kid under their wing, and straight away she fell into the system, and again just loved it. And remember, this came from a mum who didn't really like swimming, right? Didn't really like swimming, and suddenly mum's starting to feel a lot more relaxed around it, seeing how much progress is made. To cut a long story short, this kid goes on to become national age group champion, and then goes on to swim internationally. And now, as a retired athlete who's talking about a family, the first thing they'll do is get their kids to swim. Now that's the story that we want to be telling over and over again. I'll miss out a bit that she didn't make the Olympics, all right? But that's, you know, that I think that kind of encapsulates what we want to achieve and how we want to do it, and again, and we want that to be a story that's repeated. Okay, so next bit. Keynote speakers. I want it to be as big hitting as possible. So my first choice is Peter Beck from Rocket Lab. Chance of getting Peter Beck, very unlikely. He lives in the US, but he's part of the Callaghan Institution, which is basically New Zealand's #1 innovation institution, and they're always looking at ways of raising money for innovative projects and stuff like that. So if we can't get Peter Beck, we'll aim for somebody, the next highest person that we can in that organisation, to come and talk, because basically it's about innovation. We've got to be new, we've got to be prepared to go into the unknown and do all the things that Steve, you've been banging on the table about. All right? So we'll have a keynote speaker who's got to be absolutely just the right person. And then after the keynote speaker, that's when we break out into 2 separate groups. That's the first time we become separate. And the performance group will break out and they will do their stuff, and the community group will break out and do their stuff. So to give the community guys a bit of an idea about what HP is going to look like, we will then start to look at what we need to do and what we're not doing well. So we'll have video of world-class performances. We'll look at our analysis. We'll bring somebody like Jodie Cossa in to talk about what she's observed and her data, and where we're falling down. We'll also bring in somebody called Stafford Murray, who is arguably the world's leading innovator in skill analysis development and skill acquisition. So we'll bring him in, and then we'll also have Lars Humer probably speak about skill behaviours, basically the performance behaviours. So they would be the 3 people. They wouldn't all do it in this session, but they would be the 3 people that we would then break into for a short presentation, and then into groups to start working on the plan. Because really, that's all it is at the first stage. It's really about everybody acknowledging, coming together, bang, working on a plan to move forward, and then we'll be making notes, taking it down and starting to set that plan in motion. And then we'd come back and we'd have very much, and you want to click the last one on, mate, thank you. And it would pretty much follow through after that. Our second keynote speaker, I would really like to use somebody from Aon and talk about their innovation, but there are lots of other possibilities. Alistair's given me a few people that he thought that would be really good, or a few companies, because there are some great innovative companies out there.
I just sort of think, you know, Peter Beck and what he's done. I also think of someone, Grant Dalton, Team New Zealand, taking on the world innovation, 100% innovation.
And we're asking them to come in for 1 hour,
yeah,
or whatever, and speak to our group. The bigger hitting that I think, you know, we're really serious about this, and we did think originally that it would be over 2 days, and we would really go through every area that we know we're weak in, but we actually don't need to do that. We don't need to do that. We need to acknowledge, yep, we've got to move forward. We need to get inspiration from these people to say, we've got to do a lot of things differently. We've got to, in our breakout group from the high performance, we've got to then say, well, these are the areas we know we're not doing very well in. Some of them we can control. Sorry, I did miss it off there. Sorry, Si. One of the other areas that I think that, from an HP perspective, part of our breakout group will be somebody like Si. He doesn't know yet. Somebody like Si. Talking not from a para perspective, not about, oh, well, para swimming is this, but talking from his perspective about how innovative and creative and thinking outside the box he has to be as a para coach. Because, again, para isn't something separate anymore, it's all part of it. So somebody like Simon he brings a whole new array of skills and thoughts to the party. So that will be one of the big areas that we'll be looking at. So that, and then we'd close it down. We would talk about what we'd come back, talk about what we discussed in our breakout groups. We'd come back in, discuss what happens next. We would probably mention again about the scholarships and about the opportunities, get the applications in. It would be really great if we're saying there's 4 to 6 scholarships on this side of the table and there's 4 to 6 scholarships on this side of the table. And then as a group overall, we'd go away and the performance group would then feedback with their general plan of how they're going to move forward and what they're going to do next. And the community group, I would assume, would do the same, but we can put them all under one thing because of it all together. And I would like Michael Scott and Peter McSkimmon to be there to close it down for us. And that's the representation from High Performance Sport and Sport New Zealand. Again, that's pretty much around us making sure we're on side with them, but more importantly, they know what we're doing, and so that they'll dip their hands in their pockets. And that's about it. Obviously, that is only phase 1, and that is only the actual PRACTIVATE 2020 Summit is really just the launch. Everything else, the work happens after that. We're already a long way down the road with a lot of it. The stuff Alistair's producing week in, week out is already getting coaches starting to think about it, and that was part of the whole point. So now it's just a question of moving that on. One of the other things that we will discuss in the HP group breakouts will be that we're going to, we've talked about it for 2 years, but now the idea was we'd launch in April, now in October, our New Zealand Coaches Facebook page, which is about coaching. It will be about sharing coaching ideas. It will be about showing really good practice, hopefully videos of New Zealand stuff going on, but anywhere we can get good practice, interviews with innovative coaches from around the world, but particularly New Zealand. That is a very, very important tool as far as I'm concerned. And yeah, that's it. Community, I mean, I think keep it big picture. We said we want to become the most skillful nation in the world. Well, my challenge to our community, half of our organisation is, well, if we want to be, and we're saying we want to be the most skillful nation in the world, why can't we all be saying that we want to make swimming the #1 choice for Kiwis? I know that Alistair has got quite a few ideas around the community participation side that he thinks might be good. I've got a few in there, but a lot of it really just supports the stuff that you've been hearing from Steve around expansion of swimming into all across the full aquatic range. How do we engage with everybody, and how do we make everyone feel that we're all under the same roof? Just by sharing ideas with coaching, that's a start, But I've got participation numbers, and how do we keep people in the sport? I don't think that there's rocket science involved because, for us, it's about becoming better coaches. So.
So Gary, the launch is an opportunity for our community team to get in front of the coaches, right?
Yeah. So yeah. I'd like to think that although we will have breakouts, that we will make sure, and again, this is quite obviously a very, very rough draft, but there'll be the opportunity for feedback when we're all together, so that everybody understands it. And one of the messages that I've put through since I started, but that people are very well, it is about building from the bottom, and it is about what we do, in the early days, and so there is such an overlap. We're seeing this really.
And I think, this is absolutely brilliant.
You mean the PowerPoints, of course.
Absolutely. Who needs this camper thing? You just bloody get this is top notch. I think your story you told absolutely encapsulates everything that you're doing in this, and that it's actually, if we want to be the most skillful nation in the world and obviously you want to be successful in the world, it actually does start when that 2-year-old goes and has their first swimming lesson. And I think that story, in terms of the introduction, can actually show to everyone who's there why we've got swim teachers, community coaches and high performance coaches in the same room, because actually it starts right down at what happens when you're 2 years old.
The part of that story, is the key thing in that story was the parents. That my wife would not, under any circumstances, set foot in a swimming pool, you know, for lots of reasons, and you drag her in there. And yeah, it is. It's that's it. It is a story, you know. And look, we've changed from what we originally wanted to do in April. I think the fact that we go one day, bang, and then off we go. Now, I think that from your perspective, Davin, that you talked about maybe expanding it so you could bring in the other educational aspects of it. There is no reason why that could not continue on second, third, fourth day, whatever. But from the coaching perspective, those coaches have just come off a New Zealand short course. They're pretty tired. We know what that's like, Si. But I reckon, bang, we hit with that, and they go away, and bang, it's like, wow, where did that come from? And we just have to be really quick on our follow-up, you know, getting those groups going. There's already lots of talk around how we're going to do things in the regions. Darren Ward and the Waikato region are already developing their own skills competitions, you know. So the people are already starting to you know, we're not starting from zero, pushing this snowball from here. It's already started to grow a little bit. But I think saying that we're willing to invest a whole principle into it, and the fact that it's high performance sport, are willing to invest and help develop our coaches from their perspective. Yeah, I think
that's brilliant.
So it's the idea that you'll get sort of 4 to 6 up and coming coaches, and they'll be put into a mentoring type educational program over a 2-year period. So and come out.
What we can
do,
is it? So what we will do is we'll leverage off of the one or two of the good programs that Simon and I have both been through. Some of high performance sports coach development programs. Some of them are good and some of them are not so good.
Yeah.
But probably their most successful one. You didn't do CAP, did you? No. So one of the most successful ones was the CAP, which was Coach Accelerator Program, which is a 2-year course, maybe 3 years. Matt Wolf did it, and the whole point of the CAP course is to bring a group of coaches, pretty much high performance coaches by that stage, bring them together, but get them working or talking to each other about their own, you know, their common kind of problems and the common issues that they come up against, and then putting them in situations where they've got to start thinking outside the box, not sport specific at all. Now, I talked with Dara around this, and he said, well, one of the things about bringing these coaches together, and we bring them 3 or 4 times, is that we can create the environment we want. So one time those coaches might be put in an environment where actually they're not going to discuss anything they've done, they're going to be given some kind of problem solving tasks that are not involved in swimming, or we bring in people from outside of swimming, or they look for the bigger picture on how do we, you know, move it forward in the sport. So they're really easy to set up. They're not an expensive part of the plan really, because it'll only probably be 2 days. Again, we're trying to think about not burdening coaches, but giving them opportunity. So it would be a weekend probably, and it'll be a Saturday, Sunday, or we could plan it so that, right, you're going to be away from your program for just 2 days, but not trying to take them away too much. It can be basically, it's custom design. It's how you want it. Those coaches are likely to be. I'm going to say that they're likely to be people like Mitch.
I was going to say, you're talking about John Gatfield, Mitch, younger coaches
they're
that
likely
will be
to be
around
those, because
the future.
I think that they're the ones that are going to want to do it anyway.
Yeah, totally.
But it doesn't mean that it can't be one of the old timers. It doesn't mean it can't be one of them. But I do feel that we've got about, and I said 12, I was being really optimistic, we probably haven't got 12, but we've got, and there was a reason for that, but I won't go into it. I just wanted a number that kind of sat right with what I wanted to say. But we've probably got about 5 or 6 coaches who really can offer good mentorship without being burdened by being told you're a mentor. Because again, that's the whole thing about, we need to make this work for every level. And then for the coaches right at the bottom, the beginning coaches, they're not ready for that kind of stuff yet, but they are really ready for the general feedback, the general output that comes out of this. The kind of stuff that Alistair's developing every week, and the more we get the experienced coaches engaged, and that's why the Facebook page, I think, will be better, because a lot of the younger coaches are quite shy about email, but they're a lot happier to put a photograph down or something on a Facebook page. And we're going through the transition of para into able body, but actually we're only going through that really at the high performance level. It's in there, and it's been as badly coached at the grassroots level as everything else has been badly coached. So it's now's the time just to bring that in. That's about it. Alistair, what have I missed?
I don't think you've missed anything, Gary, to be honest. I'm sitting here. Can you all hear me okay?
Yeah.
Yep.
So I'm sitting here and I'm sort of nodding my head and sort of a big remark that you made, and I think